I am Elena, the owner of a small, cozy hotel in Provence, which I have managed with love and care for many years. My life has always seemed full and happy. I have been faithful to my husband Antoine, with whom I have shared over 20 years of marriage, and to our daughter Sophia, our pride and joy. When Sophia married David 5 years ago, a young and ambitious man, I felt our family idol was complete. With each passing day, our family circle became stronger. We often spent time together, having Sunday lunches and weekend trips. David seemed like a caring husband for Sophia and a wonderful son-in-law for us. His friendliness and attention to each of us were always pleasing. But in recent months, I began to notice that his behavior had changed. David's glances became more intense, his compliments more frequent, and his touches lingered slightly longer than usual. At first, I dismissed it as his friendliness and kindness, convincing myself that it was just my imagination. But day by day, I became increasingly uncomfortable with his behavior. I tried to avoid unnecessary encounters with David, but he always found a way to be nearby, like accidentally bumping into me in the corridor or coming up the stairs in the hotel when I was there alone. His attention became unexpected and unwanted for me, and although I knew I shouldn't pay attention to it, a sense of discomfort mixed with curiosity began to grow inside me. I was puzzled. Why is he acting like this? What does he feel? And what should I do with these thoughts that filled my mind and wouldn't let me rest? With each visit to Sophia and David's home, I felt a strange tension that was impossible to ignore. Every time I arrived, David found a way to hold my gaze on him. His eyes seemed to look deeper than they should, and sometimes when we greeted each other, he would hold my hand a bit longer, gently squeezing it, as if he wanted to say something, but the words never came out. It was becoming increasingly difficult for me to understand his intentions. He had always been friendly and courteous, but now this behavior seemed contrived, as if he wanted to prove or show something. I began to feel that he was deliberately seeking contact with me. His gaze lingered on me longer than on others. He chose a seat next to me at the table, tried to stay in my company whenever Sophia left the room. It was both unsettling and unexpectedly pleasant. Every time I caught myself looking for his gaze, I was filled with guilt. How could I allow myself to feel something like this for my son-in-law? I started doubting my own reactions. Was it all in my imagination, or was he really trying to get closer? I tried to calm myself, reminding myself that David had always been attentive to me, like any son-in-law to his mother-in-law, but the internal conflict grew. My conscience tormented me for those strange feelings that were starting to emerge. It felt as if darkness and light were fighting inside me, evoking both fear and curiosity. I knew I shouldn't succumb to these emotions, but I couldn't stop thinking about what it all could mean. During another family dinner, as everyone sat around the long wooden table, I felt David's foot touch mine under the table, either accidentally or intentionally. A sudden wave of embarrassment shot through me. I looked away, feeling my face flush. Inside me, a mixture of shame, confusion, and something resembling interest ignited. I was bewildered, not knowing how to react. Was it an accidental gesture or something more? My mind was full of questions, but no answers. These feelings were weighing on me. I realized that my relationship with David was starting to cross the boundaries of what it should be, and it scared me. It scared me and attracted me at the same time. Sophia's birthday promised to be a joyful and eventful day. I decided to arrive early to help with the preparations. Sophia always loved big celebrations, and I happily took part in making this day special for her. But when I arrived at their house, it was David who opened the door. "Sophia went out to get some gifts," he explained with a smile. "She'll be back soon." I felt a slight unease. We were alone in the house, and suddenly this seemed strange and somewhat unsettling. I tried to distract myself and suggested we start decorating the living room. We hung garlands, arranged flowers, and with every passing moment I felt the air around us getting heavier. On a nearby shelf lay my new dress, chosen especially for this day, and I decided to change into it. Seeing my hesitation, David offered his help. "Would you like me to help tie the ribbons?" I agreed, hoping it was just a friendly gesture. I stood in front of the mirror, turning my back slightly to him. In the mirror, I saw him slowly approaching me, his hands touching the fabric of the dress, and I felt his warm breath on my neck. As his fingers began to tie the ribbons on the back, I felt a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. But just as I was about to pull away, he unexpectedly grabbed my waist and turned me toward him. I didn't have time to understand what was happening before he kissed me passionately. It was so sudden and abrupt that I froze in place. My hands instinctively touched his chest, trying to push him away, but for a moment I felt a wave of warmth and desire wash over me. The dress slowly slipped from my shoulders and fell to the floor. Realizing what was happening, I finally found the strength to push him away, my heart racing in my chest. "What are you doing?" I gasped, frightened and shocked. My eyes met his, and there was so much passion and defiance in them that I didn't know how to react. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." David stepped back, but his eyes still burned with fire, and I felt a shiver run through my body. I hurriedly picked up the dress and turned to leave, not knowing how to explain to myself what had just happened. That scene kept replaying in my head like a broken record, giving me no peace. I realized that this boundary we had crossed was dangerous and could destroy everything we held dear. But how could I deal with what I was feeling? After that incident, everything inside me turned upside down. A sense of guilt filled my mind, pushing out all other thoughts. I avoided looking at myself in the mirror, afraid of what I might see in my own eyes. I needed time to gather my thoughts and try to make sense of what had happened. I decided to stop communicating with David for a while, to stop visiting their house, to reduce the number of visits to Sophia. I explained it by saying that I had a lot of work at the hotel, that I was too tired and needed rest. Sophia didn't ask too many questions. She just raised her eyebrows in surprise but accepted my words with understanding. But I knew it wasn't enough. I needed to do something more to get rid of the weight that had settled in my soul. So, I suggested to Antoine that we finally take our long-awaited trip to the Alpine mountains, a trip we had dreamed about for so long. I thought that a change of scenery, the fresh mountain air, and distancing ourselves from everything familiar would help me regain my lost peace. Antoine happily supported the idea. We began planning the route, booking hotels, and preparing for the trip. It seemed like everything was going to get better. But the closer the departure day came, the stronger my anxiety grew. We left, and the first days in the Alps were indeed wonderful. Magnificent views, crystal clear air, silence, and tranquility. Everything that should have helped me forget. But even among these majestic landscapes, thoughts about what had happened didn't leave me. I found myself returning again and again to that moment when David embraced me, to his eyes, burning with passion and defiance. I tried to focus on the present, on walks with Antoine, on our shared rest, but it was impossible. My mind stubbornly returned to what would not give me peace. I realized that running away to the mountains wasn't solving the problem, that it was just a temporary measure and that, eventually, I would have to make a final decision. To remain in the shadow of what had happened, or try to find a way out of this difficult situation. I had to understand what I truly wanted and how to live from now on. And as I looked at the majestic mountains, I realized that this decision would have to be made very soon. Returning home after our trip to the Alps, I felt a bit lighter, but only for a short while. As soon as I entered the house, thoughts about what had happened with David began to flicker obsessively in my mind again. It was like an endless circle from which there was no escape. I knew I couldn't avoid seeing him forever, but I hoped I could at least delay it for a while. But just a few days after our return, I received an invitation to a family dinner from Sophia. She wanted all of us to gather together to celebrate our return and spend time with the family. I reluctantly agreed, knowing that this meant seeing David again. The evening began as usual with greetings and small talk, but I could feel the tension between David and me building again. Every time Sophia or Antoine left the room, David found an opportunity to come closer, lean in, and whisper something quiet, barely audible but always complimentary. "You look stunning today." Or, "I can't stop thinking about you." His voice was soft and warm, and it left me bewildered. I tried to avoid his gaze, but he continued to seek my eyes. Every glance, every word reminded me of what had happened, of that kiss, of the moment I had allowed myself to respond to his passion. The situation was becoming unbearable, and I knew it couldn't go on like this. At some point, I seriously considered telling my husband everything, Antoine deserved to know the truth, but at the same time I was seized by fear. Fear of destroying the family, of making Sophia unhappy, of losing my husband's trust. I couldn't make up my mind. It felt like I was trapped in my own emotions and fears. I looked at Antoine, who sat next to me, and felt a painful sense of guilt. He was so calm, confident, always ready to support me. And I carried within me this secret that threatened to destroy everything we had built over the years. But how could I find the courage to confess? I knew I had to make a decision. I could no longer continue living with this burden on my soul. But for now, the fear was too great to allow me to take that step. It was a gray, rainy evening when I arrived at Sophia's house to help with preparations for the children's party. All the hustle and bustle, decorations, toys, everything seemed like a saving grace, a distraction from the thoughts that continued to torment me day and night. Sophia was excited and full of energy, rushing around the house, directing what needed to be done, where to place the decorations and which gifts to wrap. "Mom, I just remembered that I forgot to buy a few important things," Sophia said, suddenly stopping in front of me. "I'll run to the store. You continue here, okay?" I nodded, hoping everything would go smoothly while she was gone. But as soon as the door closed behind Sophia, I felt the tension in the room become palpable. I was left alone with David. Trying not to look at him, I focused on the decorations, trying to finish them as quickly as possible, but I could feel his gaze on me. He didn't take his eyes off me, and the feeling became unbearable. I heard him slowly step closer, and the tension in the air became almost tangible. "Elena," his voice was quiet, but there was a certain confidence in it that I couldn't ignore. "We can't keep pretending that nothing happened." I looked up and saw that his face was tense, his eyes burning with the same passion as that day. Before I could say anything, he leaned in and kissed me again. For a moment, my lips responded to him, as if it was something instinctive, a forbidden desire hidden deep inside. But immediately, as if waking up from this trance, I pushed him away. "No, David," I said sharply, stepping back a few steps. "This is wrong. We can't do this." My heart was pounding, my thoughts tangled in my head. I felt mixed emotions, shame, fear, and something else, darker and more forbidden. At that very moment, the door opened, and Sophia walked into the house. I froze, realizing that she had returned at the most inopportune moment. She looked at us with slight surprise and caution, noticing that the atmosphere in the room had changed. I forced myself to smile and quickly started talking about what I had managed to do, trying to distract her attention. But I knew that everything could change now, that every step, every word could be interpreted differently. I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. Sophia said nothing, but her gaze remained focused and insightful. And I knew that this night would mark the beginning of something that could no longer be stopped. A few days had passed since that ill-fated evening, and I couldn't find peace. Guilt and shame filled every cell of my body, every corner of my mind. I couldn't cope with the overwhelming emotions. Anger at myself for allowing David to cross the boundaries, and fear of how his actions could destroy our family. David kept appearing in my thoughts, and every memory of his kiss brought me pain and embarrassment. I avoided any encounters with him. I found excuses not to go to Sophia's, not to attend family events. I even stopped answering his messages and calls, doing everything I could to build a wall between us that couldn't be crossed. But even that didn't bring relief. My feelings and emotions were still with me. At the family dinner, to which I was finally persuaded to come, Sophia unexpectedly announced news that stunned everyone. "David and I are expecting a baby," she said, her face glowing with happiness. I felt everything inside me collapse. My heart stopped, and the air seemed to be sucked out of my lungs. A pregnancy. They were expecting a child, a new member of our family, and I realized how close we had come to everything falling apart. David, with his actions, had jeopardized not only his marriage but also the well-being of their future child. I tried to smile, to share in my daughter's joy, but my face felt like a mask, frozen in an implausible expression. Inside, everything screamed at how close we had come to the edge. I wanted to do everything I could to save their marriage, to prevent the destruction of the family, but now I realized how fragile it all was. After returning home from dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I had to do something to put an end to this nightmare. I picked up my phone and wrote a message to David. Please, let's forget about what happened. For Sophia's sake, for your future child. It shouldn't have happened, and it will never happen again. Please, don't come near me anymore. I pressed the send button and felt something heavy lift from my shoulders. I didn't know how he would react, but I hoped it would stop him, that it would end this madness. It was my only chance to save at least the remnants of what we had. After my message to David, I felt some relief. It seemed I had taken the first step toward getting my life back on track. But I knew it wasn't enough. I had to focus on what truly mattered. My marriage, on Antoine, who deserved my attention and love. I realized it was time to reclaim what we had once lost. I decided to initiate activities with Antoine. We started spending more time together, taking evening walks, cooking dinners, and discussing our future plans. I suggested we take dance classes, to remember what it was like in our youth when we danced until morning at parties, laughing and enjoying every moment. Antoine was initially surprised by my suggestion, but he happily agreed. These activities became our shared moments, slowly restoring the lost understanding between us. We were learning again to be close, to listen to each other, to share our thoughts and experiences. I felt a new bond forming between us, stronger and more genuine than before. Meanwhile, David seemed to accept my decision and began keeping his distance. During family gatherings, he was polite and reserved, and I noticed he tried to avoid any ambiguous situations. But despite his attempts, the tension still hung in the air, and every glance or gesture seemed filled with the silent understanding of what had happened between us. I felt his presence still affecting me, but I was now determined not to let it destroy my family. I began to notice signs of improvement in my relationship with Antoine. He became more attentive, more caring. We talked more openly, spent more time together. His support and love became a true pillar for me. I saw how hard he was trying for us, and it filled me with hope. Perhaps our future wasn't so hopeless. Perhaps we could overcome everything that had happened and become stronger. I knew that the path to healing would not be easy, but looking at Antoine, at our shared efforts, I believed that we would succeed. The most important thing was not to give up and to keep moving forward. The birth of a new family member was an event everyone eagerly awaited. Sophia gave birth to a wonderful boy, and when I first saw my grandson, tears welled up in my eyes. I felt a deep sense of relief and joy. This little being, so vulnerable and innocent, became a symbol of a new beginning, a fresh breath in our family. At the same time, I felt the weight of guilt for the feelings I had harbored toward David. Every feature of his face, every gentle gesture as he touched his son, reminded me of how close I had come to destroying their happiness with my own weaknesses and actions. But now, looking at Sophia, glowing with the joy of motherhood, and at David, who seemed happier than ever, I realized that there was still a chance to make things right. Yet this joy was overshadowed by the realization that I could no longer live in the shadow of my feelings and actions. I knew I had to tell Antoine the truth. Keeping secrets only weakened our bond, and I no longer wanted any secrets between us. I made my decision. Choosing the right moment when we were alone, I took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. Antoine, I need to talk to you, I began, feeling my heart race. I have to confess something. I told him everything. What had happened with David, my feelings, and the internal struggle I had been facing. I didn't try to justify myself or seek forgiveness. I just told the truth as it was. I saw his face change, how surprise turned into pain, and then into anger. I expected this reaction and knew I deserved it. He remained silent for a long time, trying to comprehend what he had heard. Finally, he spoke, his voice strained with emotion. This is a shock for me, Elena, but I see you are trying to do the right thing, and I know we need to figure this out, not just for us, but for Sophia, for our grandson. We cannot let this destroy our family. His words gave me hope. I knew this path would be difficult, but I was ready to fight for our future, for our family, for our happiness. And I was grateful to Antoine for his willingness to support me, despite everything that had happened. The moment I feared the most had arrived. I knew it was inevitable. Antoine and I decided to tell Sophia the whole truth. I could no longer keep this secret, could no longer look her in the eyes without revealing what had really happened. We had to do the right thing, no matter what it meant for all of us. We invited Sophia to our house, asking her to come alone. Antoine was quiet but determined. I felt his support and understood how important this was for him. When Sophia entered, she noticed the tension on our faces and seemed to become wary. "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" she asked, glancing between us. I took a deep breath and started speaking, trying to keep my voice steady. "Sophia, we need to tell you something. It won't be easy to hear, but we can no longer hide the truth." I told her everything. About David, his attempts to get closer, the kiss that happened between us, and how I tried to save your marriage despite his actions. With each word, I saw her face change, her eyes filling with tears, her breathing becoming rapid. "How could you, Mom?" Sophia's voice trembled with anger and pain. "Why didn't you tell me right away? Why didn't you stop him sooner?" Antoine stepped in, trying to calm her, but she was already beside herself. Her anger was directed at both me and David. "You betrayed me, Mom. David betrayed me. How could you both do this to me? I can't live with a man who did this to me," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. I understood her feelings, her anger, her pain, her disappointment. David tried to justify himself, but his words didn't reach her. Sophia was unwavering in her decision. "I don't want to hear his excuses anymore," she said firmly. "I'm ending this marriage. I don't want my child to grow up in a home without respect and trust." I moved closer and hugged her, feeling her body trembling with sobs. "Everything will be okay, darling. We'll raise your child together. You don't need David to be happy. We'll do everything to make sure you and your baby are safe and happy," I whispered, trying to calm her. Sophia nodded, barely holding back her tears, and clung to me tighter. I knew this would be a long and difficult road, but for now the most important thing was to support my daughter and keep our family together, despite everything that had happened. Life seemed to move on, but I knew that the path to recovery would not be easy. Antoine and I decided that we needed to start with honesty and openness with each other. We understood that if we wanted to keep our marriage, we had to rebuild trust and relearn how to understand and support each other. One of the first steps was our decision to go through couples therapy. We realized that the incident with David was just a trigger, revealing deeper, long-standing problems that we had ignored for a long time. The therapy sessions gave us a chance to sort through our feelings and emotions, to discuss past hurts and misunderstandings. I was surprised at how openly Antoine shared his feelings, ones he had kept hidden for years. We talked a lot about our marriage, its strengths and weaknesses, and despite the pain, I felt us starting to come closer together. Gradually, I began to notice that our family was becoming stronger. Sophia, though initially angry and confused, began to show understanding as well. She started to see that my intentions had always been to keep the family together, and that the mistakes I made were the result of complex and tangled emotions. At some point, she came up to me and said, "Mom, I understand why you did what you did. It was hard for all of us, but I believe you were trying to do the best for all of us." Those words brought me immense relief. Sophia began to rebuild her life. She accepted our support and focused on her child, putting all her love and care into raising him. She found the strength to move forward, and I was proud of her determination and strength of spirit. We all started spending more time together, finding new ways to support each other. My relationship with David remained strictly formal. We only communicated when necessary, mostly regarding his alimony for the child. David took responsibility for financial support, but did not attempt to rebuild ties with the family. It was the best decision for all of us. I felt that, despite all the difficulties, Antoine and I began to understand each other on a deeper level. We were learning to be honest, sharing not only joy but also pain, which strengthened our bond. I knew there was still a long way to go, but now I believed that together we could overcome any trials. I decided that our recovery needed to start with a focus on our marriage. I knew that if Antoine and I spent more time together and sought new shared interests, it would help us strengthen our relationship. We began with simple things: walks in our favorite park, lunches together in small cafes, and heartfelt conversations. These moments became little islands of calm amidst the waves of turmoil and uncertainty. I suggested to Antoine that we find new shared hobbies to refresh our time together. We enrolled in a cooking class, where we learned to prepare new dishes, laughed, and experimented. Then we started studying the history and culture of places we had long dreamed of visiting. These activities became not only a way for us to learn something new, but also an opportunity to reconnect, creating new memories. Gradually, I began to notice that our family gatherings became less tense. Each time we gathered together, I felt the atmosphere soften. Sophia became more relaxed in my presence. She began to see that Antoine and I were working on our relationship, that our efforts were sincere and aimed at restoring the family. She started talking to me more, sharing her thoughts and future plans. Our little grandson became a unifying link for all of us, a gift that brought us together. Every time I held him in my arms, I felt that this little boy was a symbol of hope and a new beginning. Sophia watched how I interacted with her son and gradually realized that my love for their family had never diminished. With each passing day, I began to feel more confident. I saw that our family, although changed, was still alive. We were broken but not destroyed. Together, we were finding new ways to be close, learning to forgive and move forward. I realized that our ordeal was not the end, but an opportunity to start over. I saw how love, patience, and a genuine desire to keep our family together were paying off. We were building a new foundation for our marriage and family, and I knew that despite all the difficulties, we would make it through. We continued to live, love, and learn to be happy. Several months had passed since Antoine and I decided to focus on strengthening our marriage. We had come a long way, filled with difficult conversations, revelations, and rebuilding trust. But now, with our bond stronger than ever, I realized we were ready to take the next step. One evening, over dinner, Antoine suggested that we renew our marriage vows. His eyes shone with warmth and determination as he said, "Let's start fresh, with promises to stand by each other through all times. We can do it in a place that will symbolize our new beginning." We chose a small winery in the south of France. It was a quiet, secluded place surrounded by vineyards stretching for miles. The warm Mediterranean breeze rustled the leaves, filling the air with the scent of fresh grapes and herbs. The winery was cozy and simple, yet full of charm and comfort, perfect for this significant moment. On the day of the vow renewal, we stood side by side, surrounded only by nature and our closest friends. Antoine, holding my hand, looked into my eyes and said, "I choose you again, Elena. I promise to be by your side in hard and joyful moments, to share all the trials and victories with you. I promise to love you the way you deserve." I felt tears of joy well up in my eyes. In this quiet place under the clear sky, I too made my vows, to love, support, and respect him always. This moment was both thrilling and liberating, as if the burden of the past had finally been lifted from our shoulders. After that, we decided to start traveling, discovering new places and creating shared experiences that filled our hearts with joy and new discoveries. We explored the small villages of France, enjoyed Italian cuisine in Tuscany, walked the historic streets of Spain. Each place brought us new emotions and deepened our connection. We learned to see the world anew through the prism of our renewed love. Traveling strengthened our unity, gave us new memories, and helped us forget the past. We laughed together, talked about our plans for the future, and cherished every day spent together. I began to realize that all the trials we had gone through only made our love stronger and more sincere. They helped us see how important we are to each other, how much we value every moment together. I felt that we were now living a second chance in our marriage, and I was confident that we would cherish it and never let it slip away again. Life was slowly but surely gaining new meaning and direction. I felt that there was now room in my soul for something greater. I realized that I wanted to use my experience to help others. The trials I had gone through taught me many things. I understood how important it is to share one's experiences and support those facing difficulties. I began actively participating in charity events, supporting women in crisis situations. I shared my story, not hiding my mistakes and feelings, to show them that there is always a path to healing and recovery. My goal was simple: to inspire them to change, to not be afraid to face their fears, and to find the strength to move forward. With each event, I saw the eyes of these women fill with hope, saw them begin to believe in themselves and their abilities. I listened to their stories, tried to understand their pain, and find words of encouragement. This gave me a deep sense of fulfillment and the knowledge that I was doing something meaningful. My experiences, my mistakes, and victories became a source of inspiration for them. At the same time, my relationship with Sophia grew stronger. We began spending more time together, not just as mother and daughter, but as close friends. We laughed, walked, discussed books and movies, and shared secrets. Sophia saw in me not just a mother, but a woman who had gone through many trials and had come out stronger. I was grateful for her support and understanding. We cherished every moment spent together, discovering new sides of each other. I saw how Sophia became more confident, how she enjoyed her motherhood and this new chapter of her life. I was proud of her determination to build a future for herself and her son. Meanwhile, Antoine and I continued to find joy in new shared activities. We rode bicycles around the countryside, had picnics, gardened, and even began learning photography. We found ways to enjoy the simple things, to savor every moment together. We realized that love, support, and mutual trust could overcome any difficulty. Our challenges had only made us stronger. We were learning to love each other again and to appreciate the little things. We understood that despite everything, we still had each other, and our love had become deeper and more sincere. Together, we were discovering a new path to happiness, understanding that the past was just part of our experience and that so much more beauty and wonder awaited us in the future.